Hello, everyone, and welcome to another segment of Lore You Should Know. I am Greg Tito, and today I am joined by Mr. Chris Perkins.
Howdy.
How's it going?
Pretty good.
This little segment is where we talk about a specific topic in D&D lore for you to enjoy and potentially use in your games, but mostly to enjoy. And today we are going to talk about something that is detailed in Eberron, Rising from the Last War, the book that's coming out November 19th of this year. Halflings and their dinosaurs.
Yes. Having worked on Eberron now for 3 editions, this element has been true of all 3, I can say. And it was born out of the idea of trying to find a home for the halflings on the continent of Corvair that felt different from the other races.
Right.
And one of the ideas was to kind of play off of indigenous peoples and First Peoples and kind of portray them as creatures that live in harmony with their landscape and with the creatures around them. And beasts, we looked at varieties of beasts that could be tied to the halflings, and we thought, well, we don't yet have a real role for dinosaurs in the setting. Is there a place for dinosaurs on Corvair? And if so, where would you find them and what would they be doing? And one of the thoughts was halflings and dinosaurs sounds like 2 great tastes that go great together. And we've never seen that before in Dungeons and Dragons. So can we do it? And then can we wrap a story around that for it to make sense?
It feels like it has flavors of the Dark Sun setting as well as with Tomb of Annihilation, or that idea of the FR thing of Chult kind of wrapped into one. But then obviously got its own Eberron kind of shtick to it.
Yes, and the dinosaurs we're talking about in this case are not huge T-Rex style dinosaurs. Mm-hmm. They're smaller, more rideable, shall we say, creatures. And in Eberron, the halflings of the Talenta Plains ride dinosaurs and ride them very, very well. And they've got close bonds with their dinosaurs, closer than just horse and rider. There's almost spiritual connection that's established between halflings and their dinosaur mounts.
Oh, that's interesting. Were they? So you mentioned, that these peoples were in this area first before other
if not
races
first,
came and settled out?
As long for hundreds of years, long enough that people don't even know where halflings were before they landed in this vast, and it's a very large area, the Talenta Plains. And largely unsettled. Halflings of the Talenta Plains and their dinosaur mounts kind of roam freely. They don't have a lot of permanent settlements.
Okay.
The permanent settlements that are there are more to engage with outsiders. Places like Gatherhold, which is basically a glorified caravanserai where other nations come to trade with the halflings.
Is that how you pronounce that?
Gatherhold? Yes.
No. Caravanserai. I've always heard that written, and I've seen that written, but never actually said it out loud before. Mm-hmm. One of those words always happens.
Yeah.
So the plain of Talenta, where is it on the continent of Corvair?
So it's on the eastern half of the continent, south of the dwarven realms of the Maror Holds. It abuts a number of countries. I said abuts. Including the goblinoid nation of Dargoon, the warlike elf nation of Valinar, and the remnants of what used to be Ciri, or what is now called the Mournland, which we've talked about previously. Right. It's basically a land consumed by a cataclysm. So they've got some pretty butch neighbors. But the halflings managed to hold their own with the aid of their velociraptor pets, which have alternate names in Eberron. You can call them clawfoots. Some of them are called fasteeths. They got different names for different species. And these dinosaurs, by the way, they tend to be about medium size, so big enough for a halfling to ride around on, but not big enough really for a human to enjoy the ride.
Okay, so something that's 6 feet tall would not be able to.
Yeah, exactly.
But dwarves.
Yes, and they can be featherless or they can be feathered if you like. We usually show them as featherless dinosaurs, but there's no reason why they couldn't be feathered.
Now, were the dinosaurs native to the Talenta Plain, and then the halflings found them, or did they bring them with
They're
them?
native to Corvair.
Okay.
They've been there longer than most of the modern peoples on Corvair. It's just the halflings are the ones who have established a connection with them. And it's safe to say, and Keith Baker, the original architect of Eberron, has stated as much, that it's not just Talentaplanes dinosaurs that halflings can form a bond with. They can form a bond with dinosaurs from other places as well. And there are dinosaurs in other places, like in the jungles of Kabara, which is a nation east of Talentaplanes over the mountains. So
Okay.
Yeah.
And how does this bond form? Like, what is it? Divine in nature or magical?
It's kind of vaguely described, but you don't have to be a magic user person to establish this bond. It is just a ritualistic matter, and the halflings get close to their beasts by creating these wooden masks that cover the lower parts of their faces that kind of have dinosaur-like shapes to them, and they sort of just bond with the dinosaur the way you would bond with a pet.
Okay.
But there is a almost ritualistic spiritual connection that forms between the two of you, not to either of your detriments. Like if the dinosaur dies, you don't die
Right.
as a halfling, but you do feel like you've lost something more than just a pet if your dinosaur dies, because that spiritual bond gets severed.
Does every halfling that comes of age have a dinosaur that they're bonded with?
Not necessarily.
No?
No.
So is it a special cast that does it?
It's not so much a cast. It's just like, hey, if this is something you want to be, if you want to ride around on dinosaur, then you've got to go, my son or my daughter, and go find yourself a dinosaur and do this, and I will help you do this. And with luck, we will find one that will like you, and you can take it home and show your friends.
But there's no membership of a
There's no order. There's no order
like
of dinosaur riders that prowls the Talentaplanes.
Okay.
Yeah.
But are they used as cavalry if they needed to defend themselves?
Yeah, and it's in the history of Corvair, the dinosaur riding halflings don't have a long list of conflicts to their names. The dinosaurs are fierce, but for the halflings, it's more they enjoy the bond and the mobility that the dinosaurs can provide them.
Mm-hmm.
Then they feel like they have to defend every inch of their borders from aggressors, because, as I said, Talentaplanes is huge, and there aren't so many halflings there. It's a very sparsely populated area. There aren't so many halflings there that they can reasonably know who's crossing through the domain at any given time. The other thing about the nature of Talenta halflings is something else Keith once described them in a way that was interesting to me, was they greet adversity the way a stream greets rough land. They just find ways to wash around it.
Interesting.
Yeah. That's kind of the halfling way out there. Don't engage if you can just figure out a way around things.
And then having that kind of bond with a dinosaur that's very fast and mobile is a big part of that.
It's part of that kind of theme.
Just go around.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So they've got close-knit families, very tight. That's a halfling trait more than it is an Eberron halfling trait, if you know what I mean. Halflings just generally have these sort of very tight-knit communities, and that element is certainly preserved. It's just, if you think of them like American Indian tribes, they sort of separate off into their areas, and they're very attuned to the land on which they inhabit, and generally like to be left alone to their business.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
And then they would go to these larger settlements to meet between clans and
to facilitate and trade between the other races, with whom the halflings don't have any natural animosity. They're not predisposed to hate anybody.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
What type of is it only these velociraptors or their ilk that is the species that's there, or is there Triceratops-looking dinosaurs?
They don't. As far as I know, Talentaplanes does not have any big dinosaurs. If you really want to get into the weird, big lumbering beasts, you either have to go to Kabara or down to the continent of Zendrick, where all things weird reside.
Got it.
So yeah, these are all fairly small, relatively small dinosaur critters.
Do they impact any of the other stuff that we've talked about with Eberron, the dragon shards and things like that, or the prophecies?
There is a little bit of connection to that insofar as two of the dragon marked houses, and we've talked about the dragon marked houses before. They're present on Corvair, and they kind of control, or they monopolize, certain parts of the economy. Well, there are two halfling clans that are blessed with dragon marks. The Galanda, House Galanda, which is they sort of cornered the Corvarian market on hospitality,
Oh.
and House Jurassico, which has cornered the market on healing, both magical and non-magical kind of healing.
Okay.
Now, hospitality, going to House Galanda, they maintain I don't want to call it a network, but a franchise, like a series of franchises of these Gold Dragon inns scattered all over Corvair in nations that have sort of inns and taverns. There aren't actually any of these in Talenta, really, but the Galanda House has all these inns scattered about in cities and towns across Corvair. The Gold Dragon Inn is considered to be a fine establishment. And if you enter one of these places, you can get all sorts of things from baths to equipment. They basically provide for all of their visitors' needs.
And they began as a clan of halflings and then settled the rest of the continent?
Yeah, they realized that they could use the powers of their dragon mark, or the powers of the dragon mark lent themselves well to providing services of hospitality to people. Magical ways to make people more comfortable or happy, or to provide things that are not readily accessible through fabricate spells and things like that.
Do they serve that purpose within the Talenta plane as well?
House Galanda is certainly within the Talenta plane, and you can probably find representatives of them at places like Gatherhold, where they meet with other races and provide for their needs.
There's a Gold Dragon in there?
I don't know if there's a Gold Dragon Inn in Gatherhold because it's such a loose structure, but you can almost certainly find Galanda hospitality there. And you can find Galanda hospitality outside of Gold Dragon Inns, just in other places. What would you call it, an FR? A fest hall might be a Galanda-run place in Sharn.
Oh, makes sense.
For instance.
Because
it's dealing with the hospitality of non-halflings as well as halflings, they have to scale up. A halfling-only dwelling is very small, but the House Galanda builds things so that humans and elves and dwarves and everybody can feel comfortable in them.
I'm not sure if you're going to have an answer for this, but it comes to mind that the kind of clannish, nomadic lifestyle of the Talenta halflings is not very capitalistic.
Correct.
But a dragon-marked house that is spreading, franchise of inns does feel very much motivated by money and doing it. So are they in conflict, or is...
No, I think it's two sides to a coin, for the same reasons that halflings often gravitate towards roguery, rogueness.
Let's go with roguery. I think roguery was good. Roguitude was a close second.
It's sort of the dual nature of halflings, that they can seem very innocent and harmless on the one hand, but can be merciless little thieves on the other.
I see.
Some of them just sort of lend themselves toward the other side of the coin and entertain more dubious pursuits.
So there's no way that the halflings who still reside on the Talenta plane don't look down upon House Galanta or anything like that for what they're doing?
Honestly, the halflings on the Talenta plains don't know much about what's going on anywhere.
Oh.
They're isolated for the most part.
Okay, that makes a lot more sense.
And kind of out of touch. Those who have the dragon marks, who sort of started to use the magic to their advantage, are the ones who felt that would best be served outside of the barren landscape with nobody around but tumbleweeds and dinosaurs. It's hard to provide hospitality to a dinosaur.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, do the dinosaur nature of this bond, does that spread to the inns and things that
you can often see that the halflings in their inns might have dinosaur pets that run around.
Okay. So that part of it's not ignored. It's just
correct. Yeah. They've got a gift of this dragon mark. They're just putting it to use, and they can't really use it in their homeland terribly well. So they've sort of gone abroad to do it, and earn a little coin on the side to keep, they have stuff to pay for. They got overhead. Not something that the normal halflings of the Talenta Plains have to worry about generally.
Yeah, they're just looking for the next meal.
Exactly. The House Jurassico, their gift of dragon mark is the dragon mark of healing, which is a very powerful thing to have, particularly in a society or a continent that has just come out of a very long, very brutal war.
Right.
And so House Jurassico healing facilities are all over the place. And obviously, Jurassico had a huge effect on the war, offering their services, as dragon-marked houses do, to all sides of the conflict.
Okay, so they provided their services no matter
Correct.
what side.
Yes, they were politically neutral, offering healing to any side who would have it. And obviously taking in money from that, but that money, again, just going back into the maintenance of all of their hospitals and their hospices and the prosthetic limbs that they make for people and all that kind of stuff.
Are those two houses, were they in conflict at all, or are they just like we're both providing kind of similar resources?
You can see the overlap between hospitality and healing. There's a little bit there.
Yeah.
No conflict really. They're sort of independent, and as far as I know, rarely do their interests contradict one another or oppose one another.
Okay, that's good to know.
And halflings in generally do not fight internally much.
Yeah, they're like, we got enough strife in the world. We're not going to...
A mild territorial dispute in the Talenta Plains might happen on occasion, but usually the tribes are so far flung from each other, it rarely comes up. I don't think it's in halflings' nature, particularly if you're a very small person, to pick a fight if you can avoid it.
Right, that's the whole going in with the flow.
Yes, exactly.
Idea.
Yeah.
But
we will talk about in another segment a halfling family that has gotten itself into hot water and into a number of conflicts.
Okay.
And that would be the Boromar clan.
Well, we will definitely do one on the Boromar clan.
Yes.
Perhaps coming up very soon.
Yes.
But one note that I wanted to ask about, and I think I already know the answer, but did the halflings and their dinosaurs, were they involved in the last war at all? Were there units that were, did any of the conflicts get into the Talenta Plain at all? And what?
The Talenta Plain would have been a quote unquote, people, there could have been battlegrounds there, essentially. Brushes with Valinar or refugees moving, across, things like that, because it is so big and it is close to so many conflicts during the war. And it is definitely possible that halflings could have been dragooned or drafted to fight alongside other forces in the war, because the halfling riders can be ferocious and terrifying on the battlefield.
Yeah.
Stature aside, when you're riding a 6-foot-tall dinosaur and you've got a fearsome mask on your face, people will get out of your way. So they would have been seen in the war. It would have been a rare treat.
Yeah. No, I'm just imagining a conflict between halflings and dinosaurs and Warforged on the other, and the fantastic melee that would ensue.
Yes.
Interesting. Okay, so they didn't go on one particular side or anything like that, but they
would have been essentially sellswords in that conflict, because they had no political stake in who rules. They don't care.
And none of the nations were invading Talenta to get resources or anything like that.
Not in sort of a let's conquer the Talenta Plains and enslave these people's way. No.
What about the relationship with the elves and the dwarves? What is that like?
It would have been fair before the Kingdom of Galifar. It would have been practically non-existent. Halflings probably weren't acknowledged at all as being of any concern.
Oh, really?
The elves would have been fairly new to the continent at that point, having in the process of migrating from Eberron and other places. The dwarves would have been deep under their mountains. I couldn't think of anything more alien to a dwarf than a halfling on a velociraptor.
You're like, okay, you guys go ahead. I'm going to go dig
I don't know
underground.
what that is, but I want no part of that.
You do you. We're going to go get some iron.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
So I think that their sort of eventual coming together, halflings would have embraced the dwarves and their earthy weirdness, and I think the halflings would greatly mistrust the elves of Valinar. I think there's enough indication there that Valinar elves, generally speaking, aren't to be trusted.
Oh, we should do another one of those on them.
They should be watched. And so I think the halflings watch them probably closest of all of their neighbors.
Interesting.
Because the Valinar elves are expansionistic and they're militaristic.
So they want what the halflings got.
Potentially. If they find anything of value in the Talenta Plains one day, they might want to take it. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, cool. Good to know. Anything else about this bond, or I mean, it seems like it would be really ideal for a player character to choose for a ranger, for example, or a druid or something like that.
If you have a class that allows you to take a companion or a pet or something, certainly halflings and dinosaurs go together like peanut butter and chocolate and Eberron.
Delicious.
Yeah, or apples and peanut butter if you prefer.
What are some kind of ways you might use them as a dungeon master, as adversaries, or?
Oh, that's a good question. You could imagine that you could have a halfling warlord who feels there's some encroachment upon Talenta territory. Maybe they're trying to build maybe House Orion's trying to build a lightning rail across Talenta, and so they're making strikes against it to try to deter that activity. Or you could do Stranger in a Strange Land by having a halfling delegation coming to a place like Sharn and have these halflings and their dinosaurs completely out of their element and looking for help to navigate the city and its many perils. There could be good adventure possibilities with so before the modern races all settled in, there were old empires that occupied the land. And Talenta Plains, given its proximity to Dargoon and the mountains, there could be all sorts of ruins there that belonged to the Dakani goblins. And the goblins might be trying to get to them, or the heroes might be trying to get to them, but they're on sacred ground to the halflings. And so you might have to negotiate with the halflings in order to get to where you need to go, or to violate that ruin on that hillside that the halflings live near, things like that. So there could be some fun, prickly negotiations.
That is really interesting. Yeah, I like that. And what's more, I'm almost reminded of the scene in Lord of the Rings with the Riders of Rohan, all being these expert writers. But imagine that as a halfling cater on dinosaurs.
And actually, Riders of Rohan's not too far removed from kind of like the Talenta halfling mindset.
Interesting.
In many ways, there are a lot of similarities between the two. So if you can imagine a story with the Riders of Rohan, it probably works very well for Talenta halflings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On dinosaurs. I like
exactly. Yes.
All right. Don't get slashed by the clawfoots.
No, don't. And don't get hit by a halfling boomerang either.
Wait, they have boomerangs?
They do.
Oh, we didn't mention that part.
Yes. Yeah.
How are they magical, or are they just
they're just mundane.
boomerang?
Yeah, they're just mundane boomerangs. Yeah, we gave them boomerangs. In fact, the halfling on the cover of Rising from the Last War has a boomerang.
Oh, that's right. Yes. There's been a boomerang in my carport at home, just laying there.
There's a boomerang in my carport. Sounds like a bad song.
It does, doesn't it? And I keep being like, "Why is there a boomerang here?" I don't know. And I walk past
it. Didn't come back.
It didn't work.
Yeah,
someone threw it, and it's never going to come back.
Yeah. Oh, and in case you're ever wondering, a lot of people do ask where Talenta halflings came from. They were just always there.
Always there.
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, I could tell a story about how halflings came to be because a quarterling and a quarterling got together.
We covered that in our troll
exactly.
sex.
When we get to halfling sex, we'll talk about that.
We're going to go through all the races.
Yeah.
One final question, because you mentioned that they were always there. Do they have like a sense that they will always be there? Like, is there like a permanence to their mindset?
So Talenta halflings, their legacy, their history is sort of passed down through oral tradition, so they have to rely on that. So it only goes as far back as they can basically recount.
Okay.
There's no scripture or scrolls or anything else to do that. So that's why their past is a little bit enigmatic. But part of it is by design. Keith sort of baked in a mystery surrounding them. Where did they come from? We're not quite sure. Could Eberron, the progenitor dragon who gave the world, just cause them to spread up out of the earth? Sure, why not? Mm-hmm. That's left all completely open. Could they be an offshoot of the gnomes of Zilargo? Sure, why not? They're both short. And they're both kind of similar in structure with a few minor physical changes.
Right.
So there's all sorts of possibilities there.
Interesting. And then do the dragon shards that fall from the firmament,
yes,
are there many of them in the Talenta Plains?
Doubtless, they are scattered around, particularly Sybaris dragon shards and Eberron dragon shards. I don't know of too many routes down to Khyber, the underworld, in the Talenta Plains, but they could be there.
All right. Yeah. That could be a good hook, too, as well.
Exactly. And you could imagine that the Talenta halflings might actually be collecting shards, not for any nefarious purposes, but because it's on their land and they just sort of show up or grow up out of anywhere, and just keeping them for relatively benign reasons, or maybe they've figured out a way to tap into its power and are using the dragon shards to kind of spiritually connect with their ancestors or their dinosaurs, or using them to help empower their dinosaurs or grant luck to their dinosaurs.
Oh, yeah.
Things like that. There's lots of room to play.
Is there a spellcasting tradition there? Are there a lot of wizards, a lot of sorcerers, that type of thing?
Not generally, but there's no reason why there couldn't be representatives of any major class or any kind of spellcaster in their midst, just like in any race.
I was just imagining a halfling wizard who's collecting these in this tower.
Absolutely.
And
yes,
doing all that.
That would be totally cool.
Yeah.
Totally allowed.
All right, that's it. I'm building a tower in Lenta Plain. I'll see you there.
Okay.
How could people get in touch with you, ask you more about halflings and how they're made?
I am on the Twitters at Chris Perkins DND.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you very much, and we'll be back with some more segments in the future.